Hey guys, it's xefour here. Today's video is more about just a few topics I think that are on the forefront here, things that are approaching, and I would like to talk about them and see what your reactions are. And again, I would love to hear your comments. Please let me know in the comments section. So the first topic I wanted to discuss was E3. So E3 is around the corner. It's the first today when I'm recording this video, and the first conference is EA on Sunday the 11th of June in Victoria, New South Wales, Tasmania, ACT and Queensland. That is Sunday the 11th of June at 5 a.m. Followed by Monday the 12th, we have Microsoft at 7 a.m. Followed by Bethesda, I can never say that properly, Bethesda, which is also on Monday the 12th at 2 p.m. We have the PC show on Tuesday the 13th at 3 a.m. We have Ubisoft on Tuesday the 13th at 6 a.m. Followed by Sony on Tuesday, June the 13th at 11 a.m., which I think is going to be an interesting one. And last but not least, we have Nintendo on Wednesday, June the 14th at 2 a.m. So I would love to hear, are you guys excited about anything? Do you guys actually watch E3? Me personally, I'll be doing my best to tune into any and all live streams I can, particularly Microsoft and Sony. Possibly Nintendo. I find a website called theverge.com do really good digestible videos. They generally break down these type of things into a 10-minute bite-sized video that kind of just gives you the highlights. I'm very curious to see it. It's actually quite interesting because you have Microsoft essentially, if you boil it down to the big two, which I'm saying is Microsoft and Sony, essentially you have Microsoft in the pole position and Sony second. So that gives Sony the ability to potentially come in and take the wind out of the sails of Microsoft. Now, everyone knows moving forward that Microsoft is going to do their big announcement of Scorpio, and it's going to be some huge deal. They're going to obviously make a big fuss about it and all that stuff. However, there has been a lot of talk about a potential PlayStation 5. I want to touch on that quickly, which this is just my personal opinion and my personal experience. And as I say in most things, if you feel differently about what I'm about to say or you want to challenge me about it, I'd love to hear from you. Type it in the comments. I could potentially get you to record with me and we can have some wonderful arguments about this stuff. So I guess from my perspective, I've purchased into both of the ecosystem, Sony and Microsoft. So I originally started out with a PS4. I upgraded to the PS Pro, and then I'd originally gotten a Xbox One as a gift, which I then sold and purchased an Xbox One S because my PlayStation Pro didn't have a 4K Blu-ray drive, which is something that I wanted. I managed to do a really good swap, so I sold my original Xbox One and then on Gumtree, and then I added another $50 out of my own pocket and bought an Xbox One S. So I did quite well. This is what I've kind of been thinking about, and I've had some discussions with some of my friends online on the PlayStation and Xbox Live networks, is that I believe that it's not in Sony's best interest to release a PS5. And let me tell you why. Is because Sony has been doing so well with the PS4, and this PS Pro is like a half step in generation. It's not a full, complete step forward in terms of the capabilities and the power of the console. It's a very minimal half step just to switch on a 4K resolution. A lot of the games, I'm actually quite disappointed with the PlayStation Pro, and in hindsight, I probably would not have gotten one. And I feel that if Sony were to release a PlayStation 5 at E3, it could be detrimental and actually annoy some of their customers because people like me, I can't say exactly how long the Pro's been out for. Has it been a year yet? Probably not. People like me who bought the PS4 and then, okay, great, PlayStation 4 Pro is out, and we bought that straight away. And now you're going to tell us that this device we just spent all this money on is already superseded. That's really not giving us good bang for buck. You're actually pissing your customers off. We've already spent money on 2 console generations, and now you're going to foist this next one down our throat. For me, it's like, well, why am I going to buy that? I just bought the last one not even a year ago, and you're going to tell me there's a new one? That's going to piss their customers off. And for people who know, and I'm no expert, a bit more about Sony's background, they're actually really struggling as a company. Their TV business isn't doing well. They've recently pulled out of mid-range smartphones to focus on high-end smartphones, which aren't really doing very well anyway. How many people do you know with a Sony smartphone? I don't know any. So Sony is really, really relying on the PlayStation to essentially keep them going. So it's a really interesting situation to see how this is going to turn out. Where you look at Microsoft, it's very interesting because for a company with so much power and success behind them, they've really struggled with the Xbox One. Not just because it wasn't the most powerful at launch, but because of the people they had on the team at launch and the people that kind of were choosing the direction, and it wasn't so much game focused. It was so much more of a central TV hub, which was just the wrong direction. So it'll be very interesting to see, and I'm going to touch on that topic a bit later, but it'll be very interesting to see how Sony comes forward with this. I don't think they're going to come forward with a PS5 simply because they have money constraints. The PlayStation is doing well, but people don't realize when you're building a new console, there is an incredible amount of money, research and development that goes into this console so it's not faulty, it doesn't overheat, it performs well, it's backwards compatible, that kind of thing, because all the console makers seem to have taken this new approach rather than dropping the console, the architecture, and the game catalog and completely starting again, which I personally liked. They've gone to this incremental kind of step forward smartphone approach where you can write a phone for the iPhone 3 and it's going to work on the 4, the 5, the 6, and so on. So anyway, that'll be very interesting to see. And again, if you have any comments or feedback, please let me know in the comments below. Another thing I want to talk about, and it's something that's really been bugging me, and some people might not find this as frustrating as I do, is that this trend in YouTube has become very clickbaity, I guess if that's a word. So I follow a lot of technology, digital, gaming videos and things like that, and those type of channels. I find that stuff interesting, and it's something I enjoy looking into. However, I've noticed this new trend of people putting question marks, like really bold statements, and then putting a question mark at the end of the statement on the video or in the clip art for the video to basically attract people to click on it. So it'll be like Destiny 2 leaks, and this is before the Destiny announcement, Destiny 2 leaks, question mark, in big bold letters. So people click on it thinking, wow, I want to hear what these Destiny 2 leaks are, but it's actually more of a question. Is this a Destiny 2 leak? And they've got some static image and they talk about it and they've managed to get people to click onto their video. So I feel like it's almost like a fraudulent way to attract traffic to their channel. Like the whole YouTube ecosystem is really changing now, the way that people get paid. And I think you have to have over, I think it's 10,000 followers now to actually make money, which for me, I've made a little bit in the past. Not that it's not what I do it for at all, but I've made a little bit, and now that's gone, which I don't mind. I do this more for me. But you see it everywhere. You just see people, PlayStation 5 leaks, question mark, or, the new PlayStation is coming soon, question mark. Just just that kind of caliber of content, and you just click on the videos, and it really bugs me because I feel as if I've been almost duped or tricked into clicking on the video. So I've actually kind of taken a bit of a stand, and at times I've commented in there, which, doesn't really do anything, or I've just unfollowed them. I personally find that very, very deceptive. I would love to see, or hear rather, what you guys think. Have you experienced that? Does that stuff kind of annoy you? Or even other deceptive tactics where they'll put a picture of a girl with huge boobs in a bikini on the clip art, and then they'll be talking about gaming, but obviously that's going to get people to click on it. So it's kind of interesting, something that I find a bit frustrating, but yeah, anyway, that's essentially how I feel about that. So moving on to the other topic on my mind, which is WWDC, which is the Worldwide Developer Conference, which is hosted once a year by Apple. If you are an Apple fanboy, much like myself, there is a really cool website you can check out, which is whenisKeynote.com. This website, essentially, whenever Apple has an event, it will figure out where you're located. It'll tell you in a countdown fashion what time in your time zone is the Apple event, and you can just live stream it as long as you live stream it from an iPad, an iPhone using Safari, or an Apple TV. There might be other devices out there as well, but I always kind of get up and watch the keynote. I love Tim Cook and the team speaking and seeing what they're bringing forward. But that event is coming on Tuesday, the 6th of June at 3 a.m. So that's an early one. I will probably do my best to get up for that. It's only a couple hours earlier than I normally get up. But it'll be interesting for those of you who are in the market or interested in consumer technology, whether it's MacBook Pros or Apple TVs or the iPhone. It should be really interesting. I personally don't think we're going to get any news about the iPhone. We'll definitely see a preview of the new iOS 11 software, which will be coming out. So generally speaking, Apple announced all these really cool features that developers can prepare for in iOS 11. However, because the iPhone isn't announced, and the iPhone essentially has new hardware variants every time it's released, there's obviously software tied to that hardware, so you won't see all the features. I am hoping for a new Apple TV. I've recently purchased the latest Apple TV with the touch remote. The only criticism I have about it is it doesn't support 4K resolution. That's something I find really frustrating. People keep saying, oh, there's no 4K content, there's no 4K content. There is 4K content. It is starting to come out. Netflix supports 4K content in Australia. I'm positive Stan does now. It's coming, and you want to have a device that's future-proof. So I don't mind having the old version, and I bought it knowingly it only had full HD support, simply because I do have a couple of old HD TVs that when the 4K version comes out, I'll just pass it down to the next TV. I am looking forward to hearing something about the new MacBook Pros. To be honest, I was very underwhelmed. I'm a super big MacBook fanboy. I've always had MacBooks since I can remember, and honestly, the MacBook Pro with the touch bar was very disappointing. I thought it was kind of cool, the concept, but it just didn't cut it for me, and I know a lot of people out there feel the same, so that'll also be interesting to see what happens from that, and I'll be definitely posting a video with my reactions and my thoughts and opinions on everything once that's done. Another topic I wanted to talk about was the infamous NBN. So for those of you in Australia will definitely know about this. Well, where do we even start? It's just something that's changed shapes so many times over the last couple of years as the government's changed. Initially it was planned to be everyone's going to get fiber and it's going to be badass and everyone's just going to have screaming internet to... each government comes in and says, we're going to do it better, we're going to do it cheaper, and they obviously downgrade the technology. They use HFC, which is like a hybrid kind of mixed network, and they still use these decades and decades old copper phone lines to do the last bit of the connection. It's just a nightmare. And I've been having a conversation with a few people lately, friends, family, and whatnot, and people on the gaming networks. And I guess I just wanted to touch on a few things that I don't think a lot of people actually know. So first of all, that once the NBN is actually activated and you're notified in your area, so once they come through and they've done it, they've laid all the lines and any new infrastructure that's required, and you get a little notification in your mailbox, you actually have 18 months to change over to the NBN. You don't have a choice. Your phone line, your cable internet, your ADSL, your pay TV is all going to be changed. So they're actually cancelling all your phone services, anything that kind of goes over your phone line, that's completely being deactivated unless the last part of your NBN service travels over the copper, but the actual way it's going to be used is different. So basically, you have no choice but to change over to the NBN. And it's really, really scary because you're finding that there are significantly large subset of people that get much more deteriorated service via their NBN than they did over their, say, ADSL or cable connection. So for me, that's a little bit scary. It's so what if we change over to the NBN and then our service is a lesser quality? You can't go back. So for me, I actually have a cable broadband service with Telstra. I pay for the highest speed, so I get 100 megabits down. It's very fast. It's really good because you can have, torrents downloading. You can have 2-3 people streaming Netflix. You can still be playing games, and other people can be browsing, and you don't really feel it. It's only when the uplink gets saturated, but the uplink is still capped at like 3 megabits per second, which is very easily saturated. But generally speaking, most people are bringing traffic down, not out. But that's something I think a lot of people need to know, is you only have an 18-month time limit. And on the back of that, I want people to be aware is that I've had stories of my own personal friends and acquaintances of them getting calls from Optus and Telstra. So you might be on a Telstra phone line, or which most people are on Telstra or Optus, I'd say the vast majority of people would be, or you're using Telstra or Optus for your internet connection. You will get these people calling you saying you've got to stay with them, and really not telling you that the beauty of the NBN, or at least one of the things that's great about the NBN, is the choices now. So you don't have, so for me, I only have Telstra cable in my area. The phone line is just, I'm so far from the exchange, ADSL just doesn't work. So I only have one option, to go with Telstra cable. But I know Telstra are going to call me at some point, but my house isn't near getting NBN yet. And they're going to tell me, okay, you need to switch over to the NBN, you have to stay with us, we're the only NBN provider. That's wrong. NBN, think of it like a utility. So think of it as, let's call it like a power infrastructure. So when you get the power into your house from the power lines, you have a choice of different providers. You don't have to go with Energy Australia. You can choose Origin. You can choose different companies to give you that service. So the NBN is exactly the same way. They're essentially just giving you the infrastructure, the pipes to your house, the network line to your house. Once that's connected, you can actually go and look on I'd say hundreds potentially of different NBN providers that can give you all the services you require. So whether it's a VoIP service, which is essentially a telephone line service, not that I don't know why anyone would want a phone line anymore, like everyone has a mobile phone, it is cheaper to use your mobile phone, or your internet access. So you will get calls, and most people who aren't, which is a lot of people, aren't up to date with all this kind of stuff, don't actually know that you don't have to stay with Optus. You don't have to use Telstra. So just be mindful of that moving forward, that when the NBN comes over, you do have the choice to change providers and use somebody else. There are so many better plans, value for dollar, that you can get with other providers. So just be mindful of that. Next topic is Xbox just did something really, really cool. It's called the Xbox Game Pass. So I actually think that Microsoft, because they're behind Sony, they're working so hard to repair their brand, to get people back onto their platform. And it's really interesting because I feel that while Microsoft has been so proactive and has been doing things that they didn't have to do, Sony's been quite lazy because they have the lead, they've got the Pro out, and they're just kind of. I don't feel like they're innovating. I don't feel like they're doing anything new. They're just kind of cruising. The PSVR was a flop. It was terrible. I used it so many times. Absolutely hated it. And you have Microsoft now, which are doing so many great things. They released the One S with a 4K Blu-ray drive, which I thought was such a smart move because it was the reason why PlayStation 2 won that era of the console generation, was because the Dreamcast came out, the 64 came out, and at the time DVD was the new format that was emerging. And I believe the main reason that the PS2 became so powerful and popular was because it came with a DVD drive. So that means people at that time, the DVD drives were quite expensive. Like, you look at them now, you can go to the local Kmart or Big W and pick up one for $20, a cheap one, and it might not even have HDMI out, probably just component, but a lot of them do. They will do exactly what you want, a cheap DVD player. But at the time, you were talking about $400, $500, $600 for a DVD player, which is essentially what the UHD 4K Blu-ray players are now going for. The Samsung ones are like $550. So it's interesting. So Microsoft released the Xbox One S, which is essentially the Slim. It's not an upgrade. Essentially, it has a very slight power bump, but they don't even talk about it, and it's just got the Blu-ray drive, which I think was an extremely intelligent move. And then they're doing things like the Xbox Game Pass. So for those of you who don't know, Xbox Game Pass is essentially a Netflix style all-you-can-eat gaming catalog for $10.95 per month, plus your gold membership. So I know PlayStation have this kind of gaming streaming service. I don't even think it's in Australia yet. It's in the States, where you can basically pick a game and it kind of streams it to your console, but that really heavily relies on having a good connection. So that means you have to have a really strong internet connection, high bandwidth, low latency, which is super important. I know a lot of people with high bandwidth connections, but the latency is terrible. And you also have to be very mindful about your data. So potentially the best option would be to have an uncapped data plan, and not a lot of ISPs, at least from what I've seen, have high speed, high bandwidth, high data allocation out there. But what Microsoft is doing is something a little bit different. They are giving you a catalog which is essentially 100 games every 30 days. And at that time, they might remove some games, they add some games, but it's basically always 100 games. They allow you to take the games offline and play for 30 days without an internet connection. So essentially that means if you take your console somewhere else or your internet connection's down, you can still play those games offline without the console calling home to check in for up to 30 days, which is super cool. And the difference is, because it's not streaming, you actually download the entire game onto your console. So it doesn't rely on your bandwidth or latency or anything. So simply, you can just, if you've got a crappy connection, hit download, go to bed, wake up the next morning, when you come back from work the next day, it'll be done. It's a much better way of doing it and avoids a lot of the problems that most people, especially in Australia, because we've got such terrible bandwidth, that we run into these kind of issues. So I think that's super cool, and it shows that Microsoft is really being proactive about their brand and their console. They're doing all this backwards compatibility stuff like this Xbox 360 catalog is so rich and vast, and there are so many classic games on there that people love. People just want to play, but the problem is you don't want to have 100 consoles plugged into your TV. So it's beautiful what they're allowing people to do. Even just having your Xbox 360 catalog by throwing the disc into the drive, and it'll download the version of the game and allow you to play it. Amazing. And generally speaking, the Xbox One plays those games better than the 360 did. So I'm super excited to see the future of Microsoft and to see where things are going, just simply because they're trying so hard, they're being so proactive, they're literally giving the gamers everything they want. I think there is a big sea change that's coming and at least in my mind, if Microsoft, and they will, announce this Scorpio at E3, and Sony does not announce a PS5, I personally think there could potentially be a big change in the whole market. I think they are doing so many things right. They are ready to go. So it'll be interesting to see. And I guess after the E3, I'll do another video and discuss my thoughts, and we can go from there. And we'll see what's what at that point. Another thing I wanted to discuss on the Microsoft topic and the PlayStation topic is, as I said, Microsoft is doing everything right. As I said, they're doing their backwards compatibility. With the Scorpio, they're doing this full step forward generation leap with the console, not this crappy half-step variant that PlayStation released. I'm so disappointed with that console. It just, for me, I thought, okay, you know, the games are going to be running at a certain quality and a certain frame rate on PlayStation 4. Oh, great, the Pro means I'm going to get a 60 FPS experience. No, I was so wrong. So if a game comes out at full HD at 30 on the PlayStation 4, you're basically going to get 1800p checkerboard upscaled to 4K 30 frames per second. So essentially you're held back by the PlayStation 4. If that PlayStation 4 cannot hit a 60 FPS target, or the FPS is not unlocked by the developer, you are going to be stuck on 30 FPS. You just get a very small resolution bump, which is upscaled to 4K. A very, very cheeky thing they did, touting this 4K and saying, oh, it's a big deal and blah, blah, blah. It's almost, I feel like it's very fraudulent the way they did things. Like, people use that 4K so lightly. They really don't put enough behind it, and I think Microsoft has done the right thing by saying true 4K with Scorpio, and they've said on some posts, Phil Spencer has said that it's not going to be held back by the Xbox One, which I guess that's yet to be seen, but the fact that they're saying that is huge. Another thing I've kind of noticed is that younger kids, when I'm on the PlayStation Network or Xbox Live and I'm playing games and there's some younger guys that I game with that are really cool guys, I find they don't really care too much about the specs, the performance, or the frame rates, which I find super interesting. And then I feel like when I talk to older people like myself, like late 20s, early 30s, who might live alone, whether they're renting or they own their house, we spend a lot of money on our home entertainment. So we don't just have a little bedroom with a small monitor or TV there that we play games in. We have a lounge room with big ass TVs, you know, with 7.1 surround systems and all that kind of stuff. So I found the older crowd care more about that stuff, because when you have a big TV that's 4K, you want that, and a 6 sound system, you want that to get you want to get the most out of that. You want to have a console that's going to hit 60 at true 4K and have awesome sound output. And for me, there's nothing better than coming home and ripping out my gaming chair, slapping it in the middle of the lounge room, cranking the 7.1 up and playing like a Battlefield, Call of Duty, or some awesome action shoot 'em up game with great sound, and I can hear things behind me, and I can crank it so loud I can feel the machine gun rattling in my chest when I'm firing. And so I think that's where I've realized that younger kids kind of go to school and stuff like that, and they're all like, you know, yeah, Sony, Microsoft sucks, or vice versa. So with the older crowd, a lot of us, because we have a bit more money to spend, we just buy both, or we generally buy the more powerful ones. So I think the older people, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong, are generally more informed. So it'll be interesting again to see once the Scorpio comes out and they say, hey, it's going to kick ass. And it'll be super interesting, as I'm a major Destiny fan, to see if Microsoft can actually nail the 60 FPS on Destiny. I think that is going to be a huge, huge leap that's going to separate the two consoles, because the Pro, they've said it's 4K at 30, PC's uncapped, And if the Scorpio can hit 4K at 60, in my mind, that is a game changer. Sony might have exclusive content, but 60 FPS is like, if you've had a game where you've played the same game at 30 and 60, it's night and day. So I honestly recommend that any and all of you, if you have the opportunity to play Destiny 2, or at least see it potentially on a PC at 60 and then go back to a 30 FPS game, you will know what I'm talking about. For me, when I got Halo 5 Guardians and I spent a solid week playing it till I finished it in different chunks of time, and then I went back to Destiny, I actually thought there was something wrong with my PlayStation. I'm like, PlayStation. I was like, what's wrong with this? It's so laggy and choppy. So you'll see what I mean. Anyway, so that's my little rant for the week. I'm going to try and be a little bit more proactive with my content. I have begun reaching out to a few local Aussie YouTubers and other people who might be interested in having some of these, I guess, just casual conversations about gaming and consumer tech, about things that might be a bit more related to Aussies and things that we're dealing with here, whether it's content restrictions between Aussie and American Netflix or Foxtel, NBN, stuff like that. So I'm always keen to hear from people, and please reach out to me. I'm super excited to connect with anyone. And then that's the end of my rant this week. So please, if you do have any comments or questions, if you love what I'm saying or if you hate what I'm saying, let me know down below in the comments. I love hearing from people, and if you are interested in having a conversation with me, hit me up, whether it's through the comments or PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, whatever. The gaming tag's the same on everything, so it's easy to find me. Yeah, again, I'd love to hear from any and all of you, and I really do appreciate everyone that tunes in. For me, this is just an outlet, and I love taking the time to kind of think about this stuff and how I feel, and yeah, it's almost soothing for me. So again, appreciate everyone, and please do like this video if you do like it. It obviously helps me get a little bit more of my content in front of new people who might be looking up similar related videos and things like that. So any help and commenting is really appreciated. So guys, thank you very much for listening, and look forward to some reaction videos after E3, WWDC, and everything else exciting that's coming forward this year. So thanks very much for listening in, and as always, peace.